May 13, 1950. Silverstone, England. A converted Royal Air Force airbase, runways still cracked from the war, is about to host something the world has never seen before. 21 cars. 21 drivers. No safety barriers. No seatbelts. Helmets that wouldn't stop a bad headache, let alone a 150-mile-an-hour crash. They didn't know it yet. But they were about to create the most dangerous, most glamorous, most obsessive sport on Earth. This is the story of the first ever Formula One World Championship race. And why it changed everything. To understand why this race mattered, you have to understand the world it was born into. It's 1950. Europe is still digging itself out of rubble. Rationing is still in place in Britain. Cities are being rebuilt brick by brick. And yet, in the middle of all that hardship, a group of engineers, aristocrats, and daredevils decided the world needed something reckless. Something fast. Something alive. Racing itself wasn't new. Grand Prix racing had existed since the early 1900s. But it was chaotic, different rules in different countries, no unified championship, no single story for fans to follow. That changed when the FIA, Motorsport's governing body, decided to create one unified championship. One set of rules. One trophy that would crown a single world champion, across a season of races held in different countries. They called it Formula One. Silverstone would host the very first round. The cars themselves looked nothing like today's F1 machines. No wings. No aerodynamics to speak of. Just enormous engines bolted onto thin frames, with a driver sitting almost on top of the wheels, fully exposed to the elements, and to danger. The favorite going into that first race was a team most casual fans today have never heard of, Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo didn't just enter that first world championship, they were expected to obliterate it. Their car, the Alfa Romeo 158, nicknamed Alfetta, had already been dominant before the war. Now, in 1950, it was refined even further. Supercharged straight-eight engine. Over 350 horsepower, at a time when that number was almost unthinkable for a road-derived racing car. Alfa Romeo brought 3 drivers to Silverstone who would define the sport's early identity. Giuseppe Farina. Cold, calculating, and considered one of the most dangerous drivers of his era, not because he was reckless, but because he was terrifyingly precise. Juan Manuel Fangio, an Argentine driver who, at this point, was still relatively unknown outside racing circles. Nobody in that crowd could have guessed they were watching a man who would go on to become one of the greatest racing drivers who ever lived. And Luigi Fagioli, older, experienced, and hungry for one last shot at glory. Behind them sat a grid of underdogs, British privateers driving cars that were, frankly, outclassed. This wasn't a race for the podium. For most of the field, this was a race just to survive to the finish line. King George VI attended. The royal family, watching a car race, live, in person, that alone tells you how significant this moment was considered, even before a single lap was driven. The flag dropped. And immediately, it was Alfa Romeo at the front. Farina took the lead early and drove like a man who refused to be challenged. Fangio, meanwhile, was learning the car, learning the circuit, pushing hard from behind. For much of the early laps it looked like this could become a genuine battle between 2 Alfa drivers who would go on to become fierce rivals for years to come. But then, misfortune. Fangio's car developed engine trouble. His run for victory ended not in a crash, not in a dramatic spin, but in the quiet, frustrating way that so many races are actually decided, mechanical failure. That left Farina out front, with Fagioli chasing but never quite closing the gap. Behind them, the story was survival. Cars broke down. Drivers nursed failing brakes, worn tires, and engines never designed to be pushed for this long, at this intensity, in front of this many people. Lap after lap, Farina extended his lead. And when the checkered flag finally fell, it was Giuseppe Farina, cold, precise, dominant, who crossed the line first. He had just won the first race of the first Formula One World Championship. Alfa Romeo finished first, second, and third. A complete demonstration of dominance that sent a message to every other team in Europe: this is the car to beat. Here's the thing about that race that most people miss. It's not really remembered for what happened on track. Farina's win, while dominant, wasn't a nail-biter. What matters is what it started. That single afternoon at Silverstone created a formula, literally and figuratively, that the entire sport still follows today. A season made of multiple races. A single champion crowned at the end. Manufacturers competing not just for a race win, but for a legacy across an entire year. And Fangio? The man whose race ended early with engine failure. He would go on to win the World Championship 5 times, a record that stood for decades. That first, disappointing retirement at Silverstone was just the opening chapter of one of the greatest careers motorsport has ever seen. Formula One in 1950 was dangerous in a way that's almost impossible to comprehend today. Drivers died regularly. There were no crumple zones, no Hans devices, no runoff areas. Just speed, skill, and enormous risk. But that first race at Silverstone lit a fuse. Within a few short years, F1 would become the pinnacle of motorsport engineering, a battleground for national pride, engineering supremacy, and human courage. Every modern Grand Prix, every red flag, every pit stop, every championship battle that goes down to the final lap, traces its lineage back to that one race. May 13, 1950. Silverstone. 70+ years later, Formula One has changed almost beyond recognition. The cars are safer. The speeds are, in some ways, even higher. The sport is a global spectacle broadcast to hundreds of millions of people. But it all traces back to one afternoon. One converted airbase. 21 cars. And a group of men who had no idea they were about to start something that would outlive them all. This has been TrackTales. If you want more stories like this, the moments, the drivers, and the machines that built motorsport, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started.